Today's case unravels the shocking details of how one man turned from a genius MIT grad to a delusional stalker who planned a near-perfect murder before going on the run and sending officers on a wild goose chase. What first seemed like a random act of violence soon became a twisted web that investigators spent months untangling until they revealed a crystal-clear picture, which ultimately led them directly to their suspect. With that being said, let's just get started. Kevin Jang was born on Valentine's Day, so February 14th, 1994, in Iowa City, Iowa, to parents Leo and Ming-Ching Jiang. Kevin spent most of his childhood growing up in Chicago, Illinois, where he eventually joined a youth group and developed a deep love for the church and Jesus. After high school, he joined the military, which landed him in Seattle, Washington, serving on the U.S. Army National Guard. He went on to graduate from the University of Washington in 2016 with his bachelor's degree in environmental studies. By 2019, he moved from Washington to New Haven, Connecticut, where he was accepted into Yale University's environmental program. There, he was pursuing his master's degree in environmental studies. Kevin was described by those who loved him as a warm-hearted, jubilant young man with a comforting smile. He loved music and the arts. He was a talented piano player and dancer, always making his presence known on the dance floor. He was the type of person who could connect with just about anyone around him and was always there to lend a helping hand to anyone who needed it. Kevin lived every day with the goal of helping people and making a positive difference in the world. He volunteered at his local Baptist church. He helped local manufacturing companies with local and federal environmental laws. He mentored young people and helped cook and distribute food at the local homeless shelter. He was a genuinely good human being, and everyone in his life felt lucky to know him. By January of 2020, Kevin was out on a church retreat in Norwalk when he met a young woman named Zion Perry. Zion was an undergraduate student at MIT, but she was looking forward to starting her doctorate in biophysics at Yale the following year. While on the retreat, the two connected and became fast friends. At that time, Zion was finishing out her senior year remotely at home in Pennsylvania. So, for the following months, the two saw each other at a few more conferences and once when she visited Yale for a tour. They had also been chatting online via Facebook or through texts and phone calls. They really connected on their deep Christian values while also realizing that they just got along so well and had a lot in common. Finally, by May of 2020, the two decided to start a relationship. They spent the following months visiting each other back and forth, mostly with Kevin going to Pennsylvania to visit Zion for a day or so at a time. The two loved going on adventures, including hiking all around the area, visiting national parks, going fishing, and even gardening. They just loved being outside and made sure to take the time to really take in the world around them and thank God for creating such beauty. By August of 2020, Zion moved to New Haven to start her PhD program at Yale. For 2 months after her move, Kevin did actually move to Texas to go through a training program with the National Guard. But after that, Kevin returned to New Haven, and finally, the couple was living in close proximity. They were both so excited that they were finally able to spend more time together. They continued on with their hiking dates, exploring the area in New Haven and the surrounding areas. By January 30th, the two visited Wadsworth State Park to visit the waterfall and explore. It was then when Kevin popped the question asking Zion to marry him. She happily accepted, and now the two were engaged. As you can see, this was the most exciting time in their young lives. So much to look forward to, so many memories to create together. But just about a week later, all that potential, everything they were looking forward to in their future was ripped away from them. That day, February 6, 2021, by around 8:33 p.m., New Haven police received multiple phone calls who reported hearing numerous gunshots in the area before seeing a dark-colored SUV fleeing the scene near the intersection of Lawrence and Nickel Streets. The area that this was in New Haven right by Zion's apartment. Now, once officers arrived, they discovered a young man lying in the middle of the road wearing a yellow and black jacket while holding a camouflage backpack. He was located about 100 feet away from his silver Prius, which had been put in park in the middle of the street. It was obvious the victim had suffered from multiple gunshot wounds to the face. Around his body, officers noted at least 4 projectiles from the gun used to shoot him. And of course, this young man would be identified as 26-year-old Kevin Jang, who was pronounced dead at the scene. As detectives started their investigation, they spoke with several witnesses in the area, one of whom reported seeing a black GMC Terrain fleeing the scene after the shots were fired. Another said that they saw the SUV being driven by a white or light-skinned male wearing jeans and a black shirt. Then, another witness who lived on that street reported looking out their window after hearing shots fired, which was followed by a scream. The witness reported seeing a tall, slender, light-skinned male standing over Kevin, firing 2 shots down at him as he laid on the street. Then he got back into his black SUV and drove away. After hearing from these witnesses, they started going door to door to see if anyone had surveillance footage that captured the incident, and sure enough, somebody did. On that footage, officers heard the sound of a car crash shortly before a silver Toyota Prius enters the frame, followed by a black SUV which appeared to be following close behind. The Prius then stops before the hazards are turned on. So it seems that maybe this SUV hit the Prius, and then so they pulled up into the street, stopped, and turned their hazards on. The SUV was then seen reversing towards the intersecting street before it's heard colliding with another vehicle out of frame. You then see Kevin exiting his Prius and then walking towards the SUV before both move out of frame. Just seconds later, you hear 8 shots fired off in quick succession, then a brief scream before a few more shots are heard. Seconds later, the SUV is seen traveling past the Prius, headed east down the road with its headlights turned off. So again, this small crash seemed to have happened. He pulled over, he got out of his car to see what was going on, and then he was confronted and shot. After the discovery of Kevin's body, he was sent off to the medical examiner for an autopsy. There, it was discovered that he had been shot a total of 8 times. There was evidence of stippling on the left side of his face, indicating that the 3 shots to his face were fired at close range. He had also been shot in the torso and extremities. The gun used to shoot him was a .45 caliber, and 3 of the projectiles were found still inside his face, while the remaining were collected at the scene. Of course, his cause of death was determined to be the result of his gunshot wounds, and his manner of death is homicide. At first, officers investigating the scene wondered if this was a case of extreme road rage that ended in tragedy. After all, there had been a string of shootings in the area in the months before Kevin's death. There were shots fired in December of 2020, then again in January, and lastly on February 5th, just before Kevin's death. No one was hurt in any of those incidents, but still, someone or multiple someones were going around and shooting off guns in the area and causing trouble. But after seeing that surveillance video and hearing from the witness who saw the shooting, they started to think that there was a lot more to this story. It seemed a lot more personal. The person who shot Kevin did so right in his face, very close up to his face, as we heard from the autopsy, and then continued firing off more shots even after he was lying on the ground, not moving. There had to be more to this story.
26-year-old Kevin Jang was shot and killed in New Haven near the Yale campus 11 days ago. He was found lying near his car, shot multiple times, later dying at the scene. The environmental science student laid to rest by fellow members of the National Guard and remembered by loved ones, including his mother, who says she was in disbelief after learning her only son was murdered.
Kevin was my beloved only child. Last Saturday evening, when the police told me he was shot, my first reaction was, this cannot be real.
Jiang's fiance says that she and the Yale grad student met at a church retreat. Jiang posting the moment he proposed on Facebook.
Oh, Kevin! Yes,
The couple had been engaged just 1 week before he was killed.
I believe Kevin is worshiping with the angels and all the saints that have gone before him.
Now, by around 8:57 p.m. on the same day as the shooting, so February 6th, officers in the nearby town of North Haven responded to another seemingly unrelated incident. They had received a call from a security guard at Sims Metal Management, a scrapyard located right near the entrance to the highway. The caller said that a black SUV had driven through his yard. When officers responded, they found the black SUV stuck in the snow on some railway tracks right behind that scrapyard. When they approached, they saw an unassuming-looking 30-ish-year-old Asian man in the driver's seat. He smiled as he explained to officers that he made a wrong turn as he tried to get onto the highway which led towards Massachusetts, then accidentally drove onto the train tracks, and now his car was stuck. When officers ran the license plate and registration, the driver was identified as Chin Chian Pan of Massachusetts. Chin Chian was a graduate of MIT with no criminal record. During the interaction, he appeared very calm and put together, so officers didn't think anything of this. They get people all the time taking wrong turns after missing the highway. It literally happens every single day. But the vehicle he was driving, the GMC Terrain, came back as being stolen. Initially, Ching Chian told officers that the SUV was his, but then he said it was a rental, though he couldn't provide the rental agreement. He also couldn't explain why the car was listed as stolen, but he said that he didn't do anything wrong. Officers would later discover that the car had been stolen from a dealership in Massachusetts. Still, though, officers didn't necessarily think that Chin Chian did anything wrong given his clean record and calm demeanor. He may have been borrowing a car and didn't know it was stolen. Who really knows? At that point, they called in a tow truck to remove the car from the tracks. After hitching the SUV, the driver drove Chin Chian to a nearby hotel. Once they arrived, the driver said that he hopped out and jumped onto the flatbed to grab some items from the car. The driver told him to get off the flatbed multiple times, saying that he was concerned for his safety. But Chin Chian refused, saying that he really needed to get a backpack, but was adamantly against the driver from getting it. Eventually, the driver grabbed Chin Chian by his shirt and pulled him away from the SUV and then grabbed his items for him. This included a briefcase, a backpack, a jacket, and a blue bag. The driver said that these bags were all decently heavy. Then, after this strange interaction, Chin Chian finally went into the Best Western, and the tow truck driver headed towards the police station to drop off the SUV. Again, they weren't just going to release it back into Chin Chian's custody because it was reported stolen, so the officers were going to examine the car. Like I said, this interaction with North Haven police officers didn't stand out as much of anything out of the ordinary. It was about 20 minutes after the shooting in New Haven, but they hadn't even received word yet of a black SUV being involved. It was also in a different town, so they didn't make any connection. By the following morning, though, North Haven police received a call from an employee at an Arby's to report that they found a discarded bag that contained a handgun. An officer responded, and upon examining the bag, the officer found a .45 caliber gun along with several boxes of ammunition, 3 license plates, and some clothing. But some of the items found definitely piqued the officer's interest. Now, the officer who responded was Sergeant Jeffrey Mills, and he was the same officer who responded to the SUV stuck on the tracks the previous night. In the bag, he found a yellow jacket, a black briefcase, and a blue bag with a Massachusetts logo on it. These were the same items that he spotted in the back of the SUV that Chin Chian was driving. This Arby's was also located right across the street from the Best Western where he was staying. By this point, he had been notified of the shooting in New Haven that involved a black SUV, and now the dots were starting to connect. The black SUV drove away from the scene, then was trying to get on the highway to leave the state, but then got stuck on the railroad tracks after taking a wrong turn. The same bags spotted in the SUV were now turning up at an Arby's that was right next to where Chin Chien was staying. All of these factors adding up were far too much to be a coincidence. Sergeant Mills contacted the New Haven Police Department to inform them of what he found. Shortly after making this call, New Haven detectives met Sergeant Mills at the Best Western in hopes of finding Chin Chien Pan. They located the room he reserved, but found that Chin Chien was not there. In fact, the room appeared as if no one had stayed in that room that night. This led them to searching all around the area surrounding the hotel, but they couldn't locate him anywhere. After this, officers went to that car dealership in Massachusetts to figure out what was going on with the stolen SUV. There, an employee said that Chin Chien had been there, I believe, the day prior and asked to test drive the car, but he just drove off in the car and never returned. Based on this, police were able to obtain a warrant for his arrest in relation to the stolen vehicle. By February 8th, officers went to the address listed on Chin Chien's license to arrest him. This was the home where he lived with his parents, but when they arrived, they found that no one was home, not Chin Chien or his parents. At this point, officers believed that he was the man who shot Kevin. So now that he and his parents were missing, they knew that they needed to find them as quickly as possible. At this point, it was believed that Chin Chien could have hurt his parents, or he could have run away with them, or maybe it was just a coincidence and his parents happened to be on vacation or something. But either way, at this point, they got the U.S. Marshals involved in their efforts to locate him. With the help of the U.S. Marshals, they started conducting searches for phone numbers associated with Chin Chien. They also started searching through the license plate reader systems to see if they could track down his parents' car. That same day, they found a phone number which they believed belonged to Chin Chien, and when they pinged its location, it was actually near a Super 8 hotel in Garysburg, North Carolina. Officers went to that Super 8 and asked if this man had checked in, but he hadn't. They then went to a nearby gas station where the cashier gave officers a cell phone. The man behind the counter said that someone brought them this cell phone, which was totally broken and cracked. It almost looked like it had been run over. So it seems like Chin Chien had this cell phone and then broke it either to try and get rid of it so that he couldn't be tracked or to throw police off his scent. In the meantime, by February 11th, other officers found a license plate associated with Chin Chien's parents. It was a black Lexus. It had left Massachusetts and driven all the way down to Duluth, Georgia, where officers were able to locate and stop that car. Inside the car were Chin Chien's parents, Hao Huang and Hao Pan, but their son was not with them. But when officers interviewed them, they learned that Hao had received a call from their son about 4 or 5 days prior, saying that he was in Connecticut and needed help, though he didn't say why he needed help. They said they picked him up, then drove him to multiple different locations, but didn't know exactly where all they stopped. For much of the drive, his parents were asleep while Chin Chien drove. At some point in their journey, he lost his cell phone, but his parents didn't know where. The last time they saw him was around midnight on the 11th, so just hours prior. They said they dropped him off at an unknown location. He just walked off from the car, never to be seen again. Obviously, this whole story seemed suspicious, to say the least. They did not buy that his parents were just innocently driving him around without knowing anything about anything. After looking a bit more into Hao and Hong, they realized that they were loaded. They had millions of dollars worth of assets back in China and had been making large cash withdrawals within the past few days. They figured that they were probably giving this money to Chin Chien. Based on this, officers felt that the only way that they would find him is by keeping an eye on his parents. As all of this was happening, of course, officers sent the evidence they collected from that Arby's to the forensics lab for testing. They had also examined the car they confiscated from Chin Chien, the same car thought to have been involved in Kevin's shooting. By February 12th, many of the results came back, and they were damning. Among the items found at the Arby's was a gray knit winter hat, which looked just like the one Qin was seen wearing in that car, and a black briefcase, which was also spotted by Sergeant Mills in the car driven by Qin. They found that there was blood on those items, and upon testing, it came back as matching to Kevin's DNA. They also found Kevin's blood within the black GMC, including on the gear shift. They then found gunshot residue on the yellow jacket and on the interior part of the door in the GMC. Then they found Qin's fingerprints on the gun and magazine within the gun that was found at the Arby's. Now, I want to note that the gun and the bullets they found at that Arby's actually did not match the gun used in Kevin's shooting, but it did match the bullets recovered from at least 4 other shootings that took place in the same area. So, based on this, police believed that maybe Qin had gone to the area on prior occasions and fired off some shots to make it seem like this was a string of shootings, so that when Kevin was shot, police would just think that it was another random shooting in the area. With all of this information put together, it was becoming even clearer to investigators that Qin had to be the one responsible for Kevin's shooting. But like I said earlier, it didn't appear to be some random road rage incident. It seemed personal. So by this point, police needed to figure out why Qin seemingly targeted Kevin. And pretty quickly, police made their connection. On Facebook, they saw that Qin was friends with Kevin's fiancée, Zion Perry. When they spoke with her, she told them that she had met Qin at MIT, where they both had been studying for their undergraduate degrees. She said that they were only ever acquaintances. There was never any sort of close friendship or any romantic interest of any kind. They met through various Christian groups on campus where they interacted in person on occasion. Then the two spoke on Facebook occasionally between January and April of 2019, before all communications stopped. By November of that year, the messages continued, again, on occasion. By May of 2020, Qin messaged Zion to congratulate her on graduating MIT and asked her if he could call her via Zoom, but she politely declined. That was literally the extent of their conversations. By August 23, 2020, Zion made a Facebook post to announce that she would be joining her boyfriend Kevin at Yale in just 1 week. Then, by January 30th, 2021, she made another post announcing their engagement. Just 1 week after that, by February 6th, 2021, Kevin was shot and killed in the middle of the road. So, although it's never been officially confirmed that this was the motive, it seems like this had to be. Qin most likely had some sort of secret obsession with Zion that neither she nor Kevin knew anything about. And we have seen this type of situation before. A person sees someone from across the room and just decides that they need them. In their head, every interaction is so meaningful, and they start thinking there's some hidden meaning behind it all. Zion accepting his friend request on Facebook. It must mean she secretly loves him. Her responding to his messages on occasion. It's because she's in love with him. This delusion builds and builds until it all comes crashing down. He probably thought that Kevin was stealing her away from him, even though he was never with her to begin with. And with that, Qin felt that if he couldn't have her, then no one could. And so he tracked Kevin down and shot him to death. Based on all of this information, and now that they had a motive, officers issued an international arrest warrant for Qin's involvement in Kevin's murder. For the months that followed, detectives continued in their manhunt for him. They knew it would take a lot of time and effort. They were looking for a brilliant MIT graduate who was studying artificial intelligence and would certainly know enough about technology to throw them off and stay hidden.
This morning, the manhunt intensifying for a person of interest in the murder of a Yale grad student. U.S. Marshals now offering a $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest of 29-year-old King Swan Pan. The former MIT student was last seen near Atlanta carrying a backpack and, according to family members, acting strange. Police say they are confident he's still in the state of Georgia.
Mr. Pan should be considered armed and dangerous. Extreme caution should be used if you come in contact with this individual.
So, from March through May, they carefully watched Chin Chan's parents to see if they would lead them to their son. Thankfully, their patience did ultimately pay off. By May, U.S. Marshals followed Chin Chan's parents to Georgia once again, though this time they were traveling with another couple. The thought was that they brought this other couple unwittingly to make it look like they were just taking a normal trip with friends. But that isn't what they were doing. By May 7th, the two couples stayed one night in a hotel in Georgia where Hong was seen making a call. According to the hotel clerk, Hong asked to use his phone to make a call, but deleted the phone number before handing him back the phone. Despite her deleting the number, though, officers were still able to track that call, which led them to a boarding house in Montgomery, Alabama. Once they tracked the location and figured out what room Chin Chan was staying in, which had been rented to him under a false name, the U.S. Marshals called in what they called a small army to surround Chin Chan for his arrest. But when they got there, according to one officer, he just came out and said that he knew he was who they were looking for. He was then arrested without incident. At the time of his arrest, he was actually carrying about $19,000 in cash, multiple cell phones, 7 SIM cards, as well as his father's passport. It was clear that Chin Chan was planning his escape and was going to try and use his father's passport to get out of the country, most likely to go to Shanghai, where he was said to have family ties and a lot of money. Once he was arrested, though, he was actually given a $20 million bond because he was clearly a flight risk, which at this point, I don't see why they wouldn't just deny bond, but that's neither here nor there. At first, he pleaded not guilty to his charges. For the 3 years that followed, his case was delayed and delayed numerous times, with his attorneys saying that they needed more time to review the evidence. He also had to undergo a competency hearing to determine if he was capable of standing trial. It wasn't until November of 2022 when it was finally decided that he was competent. Then, by April of 2023, Chin Chan switched attorneys. His private attorney was replaced by a public defender. Yet another delay in the case. But finally, by February 29, 2024, just about 3 years after Kevin's murder, Chin Chan actually changed his plea. He pleaded guilty to his charges. To me, I think the first attorney was trying to find any possible way to defend his client. I think he tried the mental health angle and that didn't work. He submitted any and all delays to give him more time to try and discredit the evidence the prosecution had. But I think it got to a point where he felt that there just wasn't much he could do, so he was replaced. And after his new attorney saw the evidence, I think that he truly felt that the best chance Chin Chan had at a lighter sentence was just pleading out. So that is what he did. After pleading guilty to the charges of murder, he was handed a sentence of 35 years in prison. He is scheduled to be released in 2056 when he's 65 years old.
You, sir, will learn from this while you're incarcerated. It is a horrible, devious act that has occurred.
Chin Pan receiving a 35-year sentence in the killing of Kevin Jang, a Yale graduate student, in February of 2021. Zhang's family and friends packing a New Haven courtroom Tuesday, making clear no sentence is long enough.
Although your sentence is far less than you deserve, Jesus has given us all far less than we deserve.
11 members of Zhang's friends and family read statements to the court, remembering Zhang as a good man, devout Christian, an important member of the New Haven community, whose life was cut too short.
He would never lead soldiers. He would never use his science to heal the environment. He would never father children and prosper to old age, inspiring those around him.
I am left alone by myself. In this world, I will never seek I will never see Kevin smile again.
Pon accepted his penalties in court before the sentence came down, expressing remorse.
I feel sorry for what my actions caused and for everyone affected and for all these communities impacted.
By this point, his parents have yet to be charged with anything, even though it seems pretty obvious that they were trying to help a fugitive stay hidden, but I guess that's beyond the point. After his plea, the prosecution basically said that they had an overwhelming amount of evidence to convict him, so this truly was his best option. And after everything that we've heard up to this point, I would have to agree. And for Kevin's family and his fiance, they can at least know that justice has been served, even though it will never take away the massive hole that Kevin's death has certainly left in each and every one of them. Of course, everyone in this case was absolutely devastated that such an intelligent, kind, compassionate young man was taken from this earth for absolutely no reason. Like I said, I truly think that Chin had some sort of delusion in his head, which made him believe that Zion was his, and when she announced her engagement, he couldn't handle it and took out his rage on Kevin. Again, this has never been confirmed that this was the motive, but the fact that this happened just a week after the announcement was made makes it seem like this is what prompted this. And then him going months before that and doing all those random shootings, I think he did that after the announcement was made that she would be joining Kevin at Yale, maybe to scare her off, or again, because he had been planning to shoot Kevin this entire time and just wanted to make it look like a random string of shootings. I don't think that it's a coincidence that this all happened right after these announcements were made. It's just so sad that Zion and Kevin had this whole future they were so excited for and was just ripped away from them by someone who they could have never suspected had these delusions in his head. But you all heard what I think about this case, and now I want to hear from you guys. What do you think Chin Chan's motive was? Do you agree with me and think that it was because of the engagement? What do you think of the investigation that led to his arrest? And do you think he got enough time in prison for what he did? And do you think he'd made the right move by pleading guilty? Let's discuss this and any other thoughts you have in the comments below. If you liked this video, please make sure to go ahead and leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I put out new true crime and mystery videos every single week. Don't forget to turn the notification bell on so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. Make sure to follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. All will be linked down below. And if you have any case suggestions, please make sure to fill out the Google form, which is also listed down below. With that, I hope you guys have an amazing week. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.